are storming up the Serie A table. Maybe they have Europe in their sight.
So AS Roma defeated Monza this past weekend, and in doing so, that meant that not only have Roma accumulated more points than any other Serie A side in the last 10 matches, but in 2025, under their third manager of this season, only two other sides have accumulated more points than AS Roma: Bayern Munich and PSG. Of course it's PSG, given next season they should probably change it from McDonald's Liga to PSG Liga, right? I mean, imagine a club like AS Roma only winning 4 of their opening 16 matches of the season. But when you look at how badly things were going for Roma earlier this season, they are simply unrecognizable at the moment. And who can they thank for that? Claudio Ranieri, Nonno Claudio, a guy who is consistently underrated or written off because he's a nice guy, but a guy who in the past decade has provided some amazing moments. Only 2 clubs could have pulled him from retirement, and the one closest to his heart is now benefiting because of that. So let's take a quick look at how Roma started the season and how their fourth manager in 2024 has been able to get them playing well consistently again and actually looking like a team. So 2024 was a fairly putrid year for AS Roma, right up until the tail end of it, where things started to improve. Well, to be fair, after Mourinho's sacking in January of 2024, there was an upturn under Daniele De Rossi. Dybala saga aside, I did a video on that previously if you're interested, as it's a lot to explain, but Roma invested about 100 million euros into De Rossi's squad over the summer, only to sack him 4 matches into the season after drawing 3 and losing 1 to Empoli, of all teams. Sitting in 16th, the ownership said they had taken that decision in the interests of the team and to move back in the right direction. Now, it may seem like a sudden decision from the outside, but after starting so well with Roma, results began to slip toward the end of last season under Daniele De Rossi, as Roma dropped from a Champions League spot into a Europa League spot. Now, in his retirement, Claudio Ranieri had been interviewed by RAI Radio, in which he had some criticisms of how the club was being run, how it seemed to him to be characterless and cold, especially when it came to the dismissal of Daniele De Rossi. And clearly his words didn't fall on deaf ears, but more on that in a second. So, who came in to replace De Rossi and become the third Roma coach of 2024? Ivan Juric, the combative, slightly explosive former coach of Hellas Verona and Torino, and the man didn't last. Where De Rossi lasted 7 months, Juric lasted just 2, winning 4 matches of the 12 he oversaw, including 1 win in 4 Europa League matches. Not great. It was obvious to everyone that he wasn't the guy, that he wasn't the man to lift this squad of players that was so low on confidence and morale and in such a bad place. So, who did they look to? A man who loves Roma, a man who has coached them twice before, but also a man who was retired. Ranieri had conjured up magic with Cagliari at the very beginning of his managerial career, taking the club all the way from Serie C in 1988 to Serie A in the early 90s.
Ringrazio I miei giocatori. Sono stati 3 anni stupendi. E niente, adesso si apre una nuova avventura.
So with Cagliari floundering in 14th place in Serie B during the 22-23 season, Ranieri had a ton of work to do. Not only to ensure that he didn't tarnish his previous legacy, but promotion also seemed unthinkable. Sure enough, he pulled it off, beating Bari in the promotion playoff. Unbelievable scenes. In their return to Serie A, it came down to the wire for survival, but Cagliari pulled it off once again under Ranieri, a team that when he tried to hand in his resignation that season, they rejected it, stuck with the then 72-year-old thanks in part to the players pleading with him to stay, and were awarded with survival because of it. Ranieri later said, quote, "This team needed a shock at a difficult moment. I wanted to leave, but the lads stopped me because they said they wanted to continue with me. Usually when you say something like this, the players keep their heads down and just accept it. This time they rebelled and asked me to stay. So I said, okay, I'll stay, but you have to wake up. I received offers from 2 national teams, but I said no and I decided to stay. I've always followed my heart and I have more enthusiasm than on my first day." Ranieri also said that Cagliari would be the final team that he managed in his career, but Ranieri is a sentimental man, a man from Rome, and a man who could never say no to helping out the club he holds dearest to his heart. So, Roma looked backwards to to move forward.
Porterò il mio pragmatismo, non posso dire saremo spumeggianti come lo era la squadra di Spalletti, perché io ho un altro carattere, un'altra mentalità.
Previously, he managed them from 2009 to 2011, a dream job for a Roman and someone who played for AS Roma briefly during his playing career and supported them since he was a child. Unfortunately for him, he came at a time when Jose Mourinho had taken the reins at Inter Milan. Ranieri and Roma would battle with Mourinho's treble-winning Inter during his first season in charge in the capital, where he would be robbed of a fairy tale first season. With 4 matches remaining, Roma were leading, but a loss to Sampdoria ultimately cost them the title by 2 points. In the Coppa Italia final, a Diego Milito goal would contribute to Inter's historic treble-winning season at the cost of Ranieri's dream of winning silverware with Roma. Of course, he would have a second stint in 2019, basically in a caretaker role that could have become a full-time role should both sides agree to it, but AS Roma went with Paulo Fonseca instead. Before we start, it seems right to clarify that I would have only unretired for Roma or Cagliari. Fate wanted me to end my career as a manager here. I was surprised by how much the Friedkins care about Roma, and now it is up to me to do what I can. I could never say no to Roma. Sure, maybe people didn't expect Ranieri to suddenly turn the struggling Giallorossi side into the best of the rest in Italy, but in Ranieri, they at least have someone who is connected to the club. Similarly to De Rossi, I guess, but someone who had a managerial record of pulling off the unthinkable now and then, or snatching victory or just survival from the jaws of defeat. When news of it came, murals were painted in quick succession. Ranieri was greeted by hundreds of fans, all waving Roma flags, and look, you can't escape the ancient Roman iconography in the city, okay? I mean, look at this mural that went up right away. It's not just me doing cliche outsider things, drawing everything back to ancient Rome. Oh, he's a gladiator, whatever. It was the Romans that did this, okay? So anyways, it makes sense as to why they went with Ranieri, not just for his connection to the club, but a sweeping change in the overall attitude that was needed for what had become an incredibly negative group of Giallorossi players. Ranieri is a dreamer. As he had said in the past, quote, "I always hope for impossible things. You must never give up. You have to battle until the last second. If you give up sooner than that, you have not done your job." Now, impossible things are relative, right? And for AS Roma, the idea of stringing 2 wins together in the early portion of the season was seemingly an impossible thing. But with Ranieri, don't let his kindness and gentle nonno nature betray you. This man wants to win, especially when it comes to Roma, saying, quote, "I want players who will spit blood on the pitch and won't surrender an inch, even if things are going badly. I'm a fan first, a coach second, and fans love those who always give everything they have got." Now, perhaps one of the more integral aspects of his appointment, which was always just until the end of this season, was that Claudio Ranieri would then transition into an executive role once this campaign had concluded. And no, I don't mean campaign as an ancient Roman allusion, but I forgive you for thinking that. It's my bad for the choice of words. But yes, at the end of this campaign, he's transitioning into an executive role. Ranieri's first match back in charge, his third debut match with the club, was against Napoli. Difficult first matchup given how Napoli had started the season, and they ended up losing away to Conte's side thanks to a second half strike from Romelu Lukaku, burning one of his former clubs, right? Then they drew Tottenham away 2-2 in the Europa League, lost at home against Atalanta, not exactly the easiest first 3 fixtures, right? And finally snapped the 6-match winless run with a 4-1 victory over Lecce, and in December, things really started to pick up for Ranieri. Losses to Como and Atalanta were the only blemishes as Roma won 6, drew 2, and lost 2 in a very busy December. And then 2025 hit, and AS Roma has lost 2 of their 13 matches played, one in Europa League, one in Coppa Italia, meaning their league form has been perfect. 8 matches, 0 losses, and Ranieri even made up for that earlier loss to Napoli by holding them to a draw at home. And most prized of all for Roma supporters, defeating what's been a very strong Lazio this season in the Derby della Capitale 2-0. Fun fact, actually, Lazio's coach Marco Baroni actually played under Ranieri in the early 90s when they were both at Napoli. Of all the teams in the top 5 leagues, only PSG and Bayern Munich have accumulated more points in 2025 league play. As mentioned in the intro, based on their form in the past 10 matches, they've accumulated more points than any other Serie A side. They're quite honestly the most informed side in Serie A at this moment, as they are undefeated in those 10 matches. And what has changed? I mean, AS Roma are still playing variations of a back three, either a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-2-1, but under Ranieri, we've seen vast improvements on the performances of key players such as Paulo Dybala. We've seen Tommaso Baldanzi become a regular in the side of late. Mathias Süle, an important signing and massive talent, has begun to find himself at the club. And he and his agent thanks Ranieri for his upturn in form, actually. Alexis Salamakers has found his stride as well, scoring 5 goals so far this season, matching his best ever tally. In general, the attack, the wingers, the strikers have seen great improvements as the attackers are worrying about just attacking rather than the defending they all had to do under Juric. Baldanzi himself has said, quote, "Ranieri gave us back what we needed. We are in the midst of fighting for something important. We believe in it and we aim to win every game and always do better. We aim to give our best in every game. We have to bring home as many points as possible. We believe in turning this season around." Roma didn't really need a revolution. They just needed to get back to basics. As Ranieri has said, quote, "Now we are a team. Everyone knows what to do." The thought of him leaving his coaching post again is probably scary for the players and supporters alike, but maybe he's the person that they need behind the scenes, and he's actively sounding out options for who will be Roma's coach going forward. Gasperini is being considered, given he said he won't sign another contract with Atalanta. Ancelotti has been spoken of as a dream signing for AS Roma, which would be pretty cool actually, given he played for Roma in the past. Ranieri himself has spoken about his admiration for Cesc Fabregas at Como and how he believes Fabregas will be a top coach in the future. Now, Ranieri had said back in September that AS Roma was cold in spirit and characterless, 2 absolute antonyms when speaking of Claudio Ranieri. And if he can bring that back to Roma, this fan of the club will become an icon. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in another video soon. Be well.